Oh boy. Guess I better go ahead and start this stream. I guess I better go ahead and talk about this stream because right now I'm going to be reacting to a guy talking about changing the language for Wizards of the Coast's Dungeons and Dragons. Lately, I haven't been doing this type of content before. Keep in mind, I'm just looking at this stuff, wondering what the hell is he talking about. Now, this is kind of the thing with the issue of sensitivity readers, inclusivity changes in Dungeons and Dragons books. The guy basically had wrote a blog about this and also posted a video blog about this. Keep in mind, for those who don't know, from what I understand, this is the guy that is doing this. His name is Teos Abida. If I can't pronounce it right, I apologize. Abidea, Abdia, Teos Abdia. If that's how you pronounce it, I can't really, it's Spanish, but he's from he's a Colombian American that grew up in Colombia. Currently lives in Portland, Oregon. Health and safety consultant, the environmental health and safety consultant, his occupation. Fantasy wife, 2 kids, now plays RPGs. His favorite RPGs is Dungeons and Dragons. Favorite setting, Dark Sun, then Greyhawk. This guy has done some very good things, like he actually has published a lot of works for Dungeons and Dragons. He's been a developer very well known in his field. He also published a lot of things for Dragon Insider, in case you wonder why. Now, he is also known as Alpha Stream. Now, keep in mind, this guy is trying to change the language for Wizards of the Coast's Dungeons and Dragons. And keep in mind, the guy's trying to do this. And I'm just trying to listen to what he has to say and try to react to this and then give my little inputs on it little by little. So here we go.
Welcome back to Success in RPGs. Today I want to talk about something really interesting that started back in March when Wizards of the Coast made changes to the 2014 books. Those are the books you may have in your hands right now. And they did it to the digital versions of those books in D&D Beyond. And I want to talk about what's in those changes because we can learn a lot from them. Wizards of the Coast made inclusivity and sensitivity passes to look through the material and make changes. And by looking at what has changed, we can learn from that effort. Today on Success in RPGs.
Okay.
So you may be curious to learn a little bit about these changes. Here's kind of how this came to be. Back in March of 2023, I discussed with co-host Sean Merwin on the Mastering Dungeons podcast how there had been a number of changes recently that didn't have errata. At the time, it was after the Hadozi incident where Wizards of the Coast had put in very problematic language in their books, and then they fixed that. But when they made the...
All right. For those who don't know about the Hadozi incident, basically they had an issue with spelljammers. Apparently the Hadozi was a monkey race of beings, and the story, the background story for them was they were a race created by a magical wizard who basically created them and used them as slaves. Keep that in mind, slaves. And a lot of people did not like that and were triggered by this, and they wanted Wizards of the Coast to change this. They could have easily ignored this and told people and educate people that these are just fictional, not real, animals in a game. And of course, they had to bring up this whole issue with orcs are black people argument. And I was just like, they're not real, but for some reason they had to bring him into this whole argument about this. And of course, you know what? Wizard of the Coast caved into this shit. Like, literally. They caved into this shit, making because of course if they don't do something about it, 2,000, left wing people will get upset and be upset about this and start demanding that they shouldn't be around. Keep in mind, this is what's going on, and they could have easily ignored this, but they chose not to in any way, shape, or form, because Wizard, they want to increase their ESG score so they can get their investments and shit. So yeah, that's what happened. The Hidozi with his monkey race. Now, I'll show you what they look like. No, it's not him. That's not the one. Yeah, let's look at it. Let me see. Spelljammers. Yeah, so that's what happened. Draws uncomfortable parallels to the real world enslaved people in their depiction of gliding simians. That's what happened. And this was the Hildozi. These were the little, monkey races that like to like to play music and fly. And it was kind of funny how a lot of people, D&D had to remove that race entry because it was uncomfortable for a lot of those people that felt victimized by 9/11, and they felt like this was going to happen to them. They felt like this was going to get them killed. And so the Hidozi had to be sacrificed to the internet gods in order to appease a bunch of people who were upset about the racism as they claim. And keep in mind, like, the Hidozi perpetrators were mammals no bigger than the house cats, hunted by large natural predators. They took the trees and evolved like wing-like flaps and enabled them. But it was really like they didn't like the story about them. And the language that they didn't like the language depicting them. That's what happened. And thus they got upset about this because it's kind of stupid that they would go out of this way. Like, Wizard revised the Hidozi race following the controversy, and that's what they did. And they listened to this crazy stuff that people made. So that's what was going on. So let's continue. I'm sorry if I'm taking so much this time.
Fix in the D&D Beyond to the Spelljammer book, they also went ahead and made a bunch of other changes. Things like how the glide worked for the Hidozi species. And when they did this, they did not create an errata document. It just sort of happened, right? And so we were talking on the show about how this was kind of like a stealth change where they had done it and not told anyone. And so you just had to sort of figure it out. And eventually, when they reprinted the book, well, then you might see it in the physical form. But even in the digital form, you might not be aware it's changed until one day you look at it. Someone could have printed out a character sheet, and then you look on the D&D Beyond, and it doesn't match up, right? So we were talking about this, and a listener contacted me after the show and said, hey, I was listening to this. Well, I took a look at D&D Beyond, and I found a bunch of other changes in the core book. So not in something like Spelljammer, but in the 2014, the original 5e, Player's Handbook, DMG, and Monster Manual. And this person shared with me a comparison that was possible because D&D Beyond publishes on a different schedule and sort of through a similar but different process between the D&D Beyond website and the mobile app. So when you take those two and compare them, you can find changes in between the delay. Now, you won't see them now because all the changes they're going to talk about, they've already been adjusted between the two platforms. But if you have a original printing of the book, or I think any printing actually will work because these changes probably haven't made it into a print version. And maybe they won't, since there'll be 2024 versions of the books. But if you look at the physical copy of the book and you look at D&D Beyond, either on the mobile app or on the website, you will see these changes that I'm going to share with you today. And the point of looking at these changes is that we can learn from them as creators, as DMs, as designers, or even as fans who want to understand ways that the language can improve. And language is always improving and evolving in all of our role-playing games. Wizards of the Coast is one of the biggest companies. Well, they're the biggest role-playing game company out there. So we want to learn from what they're doing. They can often lead or set the stage. In April, when I went to the D&D Summit, which I was fortunate to attend, I said to them, hey, I noticed these changes.
Yeah. So he went to the D&D Summit and told them he noticed the changes that were happening with what was going on. And yeah, that's what happened. He decided to change the language.
Could you share those changes with everybody? I mean, I'll do it, but I'd rather you do it. And they said that they planned on communicating what their inclusivity and sensitivity policies were, but they haven't done so, and it's been 7 months. So I want.
Yeah, because here's the problem with the inclusivity and sensitivity situation. For those who don't know, Dragonlance had to deal with this situation with the whole sensitivity reader situation, and it really pissed off the creators of Dungeons and Dragons, and they had to sue. They were planning to sue Wizards of the Coast, from what I heard, and it kind of led to a situation to where they kind of had to deal with the language barrier because they were pissed off of how angry they were with what they were trying to alter and change with Dragonlance. Now, let me see if I can do this because I know most people might think I'm full of shit, but I do recall this because yeah, the author was gonna drop a 10 million. Like, they dropped this. They were planning to sue Wizards of the Coast over this whole thing because what happened was they were pissed with the whole sensitivity reader situation because they were treated like shit at Wizards of the Coast. They didn't even know who they were. Alleged, like, this is what happened. Publisher Wizards of the Coast in 2020 paired alleged a breach of contract related to the new series of novels set in their famous role-playing universe. How exactly the dispute had been resolved, unknown. So that's what some people suspected. Because, of course, I know that she's planning to do a sequel to the Dragons of Twilight. But her new book, I did check it out, and they were planning to do this. I know that Tracy Hickman and his wife was planning to do this. Margaret West. No, actually, that wasn't his wife. Margaret West and Tracy Hickman are both friends. I'm sorry about that. I keep... So, Margaret West was not happy. If I pronounce it right, I apologize. But you can see right here, they were pretty pissed off with Wizards of the Coast. And it wasn't really something to expect. They were pretty pissed off with them. over a while back, and I do believe it was over the whole sensitivity reader stuff. So they were planning to release a couple of books, and they weren't even allowed to do so. And it really pissed off because that whole sensitivity, like, some people believed, and according to the rumors, the sensitivity readers thing, they were trying to alter the changes on the books. And that really was upsetting to a lot of people because I did read those books. And let me tell you, they were long pages. And I read them. I read them all. I did love them. Because I know that Raslin, if I can't pronounce his name, he had an epiphany and he realized, I fucked up. I got to get out of here. He was trying to challenge. He tried to challenge the god known as Tiamat, and he basically was like, "Oh shit! If I become a god, I'll destroy this whole land." Because it took his only true friend out of this whole situation that really did it was a Kinder. And that Kinder went all the way to tell him, like, get out of here. He had to tell him to get the hell out of there because... And it was funny, like, that whole book series was pretty good, and I really missed that book series. And I kind of felt bad for Margaret West because she does a good job writing, but her last book that I was upset about was just dauntingly bad because Mika, the character that she had for the Dark Amber series, I think that's what it was, wasn't the best book series I could read. I can tell you.
Get that. Could you try again?
Oh boy, my phone. So that's what happened because the whole sensitivity reader thing.
I want to go ahead and share this because I believe that by looking at these changes, creators can learn. And I want to say you may not agree with every single one of these changes. That's totally fine, right? All of us are going to be in a state of evolution as to where we are in any one particular issue. So a good example is orcs, right? There are a lot of GMs that I talk to that say, hey, look, I just want to murderize orcs left and right. What's wrong with that? And that's fine. I think having an open mind and thinking through issues, looking into the history of orcs, looking into different people say, that's helpful. If you approach it with an open mind, you think about it, then you can begin to sort of look at which pieces of that equation you're kind of ready to take in and why and how. And some issues are much more important than others, right? We don't have actual orcs in our world, so it's a little different than if you're feeling different about some of the other issues that are far more important, far real and tangible to people, right? Inclusivity in this game, in D&D and in RPGs as a whole, have been responsible for the enormous growth of role-playing games. As role-playing games become more accessible, more inclusive, more representative of all of us, then we see each other there, right? Okay, so hopefully that's clear. And I invite everybody to look at this not as a list of things that you must believe in or that you have to 100% agree with the particular change that Wizards of the Coast has made, but rather an opportunity to learn from these texts and consider them and think about them. And you may find, as I have on things like orcs, that your thought process evolves over time and you come to accept a different place than when you started on a particular day. That's growth. That's good, right? We all want to evolve. So we're going to take a look at
I don't know,
the actual changes, and you'll find these are also going to be on alphastream.org in a blog post, which I'll be showing you here as a preview form before I publish it. Looking at these changes, you'll be able to take a look at...
Of course, the shilling has begun. The shilling has begun. The shilling has begun, everyone. And I didn't realize that. Of course, this is the whole time everyone would be smart enough to change the language in order to do something around it. Anyways, I'm just trying to do my thing here. I know most people are having fun right now, But anyways, this is so funny. I'm reacting to some of the stuff that's happening right now. And it's like, yeah, it's becoming one of those things right now that you would expect. But let me see here. I'm just looking at the language of my... So, go ahead and look at this and just see what I can do.
At the actual images that capture what's called a differential file, a diffie file, that takes the comparison between the two sites and tags the changes that are in place.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so here we are on my website, alphastream.org. Again, you can find all of this here.
He's shilling that stuff again.
And read through the article at your own pace,
shilling.
think through all the different topics, look at the examples, even save it as a PDF or whatever.
He's shilling like
if you're
a villain.
Designer, you do a lot of homebrew work and you want to kind of change up your language, then this can serve as a guide for that.
The guide on how to
in this article
do 1984, guys.
That I just told you about, the Creator Summit.
The guide to 1984 inclusive language, guys. Yes, a lot of people don't realize 1984 is the guide to... A lot of people don't realize that. 1984 was the warning sign of all things. Hell, they're trying to change the language in order to do this. Hell, if anything, you could probably read the Politics in the English Language. I believe by George Orwell. Yeah, that's the one. I highly recommend it to everybody. Politics in the English Language. Yes, this is by George Orwell. He basically talked about this. This is like the sample of it. You can see right here, this is... Most people who bother to matter would admit that English language is in a bad way, but generally assume that we cannot concise action to do anything about it. Our civilization is descendant of our language, so the argument runs... It follows that any struggle against the abuse of language, it is a sentimental sarcasm. Yeah, that's pretty much what you would expect from George Orwell's language. And I can't expect it to be as good as as good as I speak. I don't speak well. So, yeah. So here we go.
And how the changes came to be. And I make a point here that this has been in place for months, right? This is not something that just happened, and shock and alarm can be expected in the industry. In fact, anybody looking at the core books on D&D Beyond, you've been looking at these changes for months, right? Since at least March, depending on which of the two platforms you use, but several months. There's been, I don't think anyone has noticed, right, is the reality of this. Maybe a few people have noticed a thing or two. And that makes sense to me because a lot of these changes are subtle things. They're not like super obvious, like, oh yeah, they're, you know, the books were telling us to murder our families. No, they weren't doing anything that wild, but
I don't know why anyone would say that, but it does not say you can murder your families, but it'd be funny if it did. And that would be like the satanic panic back in the 1980s. But yeah, you can see right here what he was saying. Decolonizing the games is a common topic, seeking to address how both fiction and nonfiction writing has historically portrayed non-Western cultures and non-urban areas as lesser. The language of our RPGs still has these depictions. The barbarians who wears animal skins and portrayed as uneducated. the quest of the tame of the dangerous wilderness in any sediment of the creatures dwelling there. Now he's trying to show the revisions that they're doing in the core rule books, because they're trying to change the language in order to address some of the issues that they don't want to address, to appease a certain group of people who speak their language. Keep in mind, these people think everyone speaks the same language as them. And it kind of does get into the whole 1984 thing. Guys, I swear. Like, 1984 was the warning sign of what happens when you try to change the language. And I highly recommend it to people, because this is George Orwell's warning of how the English language can be, subverted and changed for the worse of things. Because seeing how this works, I guess, to manipulate the masses into believing this language, like Politics and Language of the English Language by George Orwell, which can be used. And the thing is, it's like he wrote The Animal Farm. He wrote a lot of things that kind of put out the takes on communism, even though he was anti-communist and anti-fascist. Like, a lot of people don't realize that. So, 1984 was a guidebook for this one. So, yeah. So let's continue.
Just like problems can be subtle, solutions can be subtle too. And these changes are important even if they're subtle and even if they don't get noticed all the time. And so I'm going to go through the topics. I took all the changes that we found in the files and I grouped them into topics and showed the actual examples of what's changed. It's important to note that this is all in transition, meaning that what you see today may not be what Wizards uses in the 2024 books. The field of sensitivity and inclusivity changes and evolves over time. So we will see.
So I'm going to point out something. Excuse me. Because I had a lot of food to eat the other day, today, because I was at work and they had some food set up for the Thanksgiving meal. Thank you, guys. Anyways, this is what's going on, guys. Wizards of the Coast has been changing and altering languages in order to, they're trying to appease a certain group of people. And that group of people happens to be those, Tumblrettes, those the Zoomers, the kids that definitely, they try to change the definition of words to accommodate those people. And this is kind of the thing that's troubling, because 1984 warned about this. And this is kind of what's happening. And by the looks of what's going on, that's what to expect when you hear this type of stuff. They hear this type of language. And I'm just looking at this going like, okay, this is going to be the successful idea that they're trying to do. So I'm going to look into this and try to point out this.
Certainly over time changes to these. You can't take this as a guide that's static. This is something that evolves, but at least it helps you see where the thought process was early this year for Wizards of the Coast and their sensitivity and inclusivity team and their editorial team. All right, so the first topic here that I've grouped is issues of savagery and civilization. And this can be something that ties into larger topics like decolonization of games, which seeks to address how in both fiction and nonfiction writing, we often portray the non-Western cultures, the non-urban areas as lesser, right? The cities are evolved and intelligent and progressive when they're just murdering people in different ways, right? And And there are good and bad to everything.
Yes, they murder people left and right. Like, I seen how it's done in the game. Yes, I once killed a dragon as a cleric. No joke. With a... I remembered I rolled a 20. And apparently the dragon did have, like, less health. And I didn't even realize that the dragon was going to, like, croak on me when I slammed my freaking mace on him. I basically was like... My friend was like, "Congratulations, Prince Adam. You beat him." Because because apparently in 3rd edition, I recalled that there was a ability that was from the Strength Domain, and I was like a cleric accord, and I managed to fucking bash that thing in the head. I was like, I basically went like this and just called upon my god's domain and basically slammed the fucking mace in his head. That's what happened. So that's what happened. But let's go ahead and continue. Like, you can kill anything. You can kill an animal. You can kill a humanoid. You can kill whatever you want, but they have to refer to these things. So let's continue.
Regardless of where you live, where you grew up. So trying to address that language of how we discuss what is civilization, what is savagery, is often done by removing the words like savage that are made to describe things. And none of this is about removing your fun, right? So I like playing barbarians. I like DMing barbarians. I like exploring the wilderness. I like going to small villages. But the language we use can make that experience really cool without any of the harmful part of it. And so a lot of it this isn't about removing things from the game. It's about painting with a different brush, if you will. And everything here below, you're going to see this little blue box reminds you in the website that everything you see, the text that's in yellow, the line that's in yellow is the original line. The line that's in green is the new line, the revision of the text. And in red is what was removed, and green is what was added. So we can see in the Dungeon Master's Guide, they say where they confront savage giants, ferocious hydras, etc., and they change that word savage to brutal, right? Or in another example, they change savage raiders to merciless raiders.
Yeah.
And so we can see...
Merciless raiders. Merciless. Like, the definition for savage, like... Savage. Let's look at the word savage means. An animal, a force of nature, fierce, violent, and uncontrolled. Something bad or negative, very great, severe, brutal. That's the same exact thing. Brutal's the same thing. They changed it to brutal giants, vicious person. It's the same exact thing. But they decided, let's remove savage. It doesn't sound like a very good word to say. Let's change it to something else. We'll call them, so that the kids can get into it. We'll call them, in their own words, like swag giants. Let's turn to, instead of confronting these swag giants. Let's look up swag. What does swag mean? Like, swag, the current or piece of fabric fastened, hanged, and drooping curve. Money or goods taken by a thief or burglar. Arranged. Like, I know that it doesn't sound right, but it's funny. Because they do, like, giants do have, like, loincloth. Like, they have nothing but loincloth on them. And they do have swag. Like, yeah. Like, swag. By the dictionary word, swag. Like, because giants do wear the swag on them. Like, they do wear a piece of fabric on them, which is like cloth, and and they run around in loincloth and just hit people with a giant freaking like club and just beat up people or smash them down as they usually do. So let's see, because brutal savage is kind of like that, but I don't even know why they want to change the meaning of savage, because savage is the same exact thing. You can see right here, an animal, a force of nature, a fierce, violent, uncontrolled, and it's like something bad or negative, very great and severe, crushing, devastating, crippling, terror, like undomesticated, feral, fierce. But it could mean a lot of things, like an adjective, because it does describe an adjective. It's an adjective, and I don't know why the guy would feel like brutal's the same exact thing. It's a noun. A brutal or a vicious person, but instead they want to change it because they feel that that's the right and correct word to do, because it describes a barbarian, an orc, a demon, sadist, a beast, monster, a brute, which they're trying to put it as a noun, but it's an adjective. And they're trying to change it because they feel that it's not describing the correct version of it.
Here is this thought process of removing that descriptor and using a descriptor that's more accurate for what we're trying to say, right? Mm-hmm. What are we trying to say by savage? Well, savage has a lot of connotations that we're actually not trying to say. So let's go to what we're really trying to say, right? They are brutal, they're merciless, they're ruthless. And if you're a creator, whether you publish or for your own home creations, this is something you can kind of put in your to-do list, right? Like, hey, when I'm going to talk about how these things are, and I might have used the word savage, I can instead think of brutal, merciless, ruthless, right? Things like that. We also see here this case about a barbarian horde, and it gets changed to an invading horde. In some cases, horde actually gets removed. We'll see below. The monster manual has a bunch of other changes, and a lot of times the simplest approach to this kind of language is just remove the word. The word is often an additional thing carrying all of this problematic weight and isn't really needed. So they say dwarves and other civilized folk who might be friends or rivals. And here they change it to say dwarves and other folk who might be friends or rivals. You didn't actually need that word there, so you can often just prune it, and the meaning of it still works, right? You don't need to emphasize that dwarves are somehow civilized, right? What is civilizing? And it carries that larger connotation. Same thing here. They're talking about the races of goblinoids, saying almost as numerous. They just simply remove far more savage and
I can agree with him on that one.
Uniformly evil. Just take that out, and if you need to address it, do so in specific ways for the individuals, the groups that you're talking about, rather than just painting with a broad picture like that. Here again, a removal. In this case, a swap, civilized for settled, and then violent instead of savage, and then just removing a piece about Quagos, where they're not always the brutal Underdark denizens they are today. You can just remove that. It doesn't really add a lot. But you can see the kind of reading that the sensitivity and inclusivity team is doing and how they address these issues and what they pull out of here. The player's handbook as well talks about adventurers heading back to civilization to rest. Just call it their home base, right? A fierce warrior who can enter battle rage. You don't have to say of primitive background when you're discussing about something like a barbarian, right? This one is really interesting. And some of these, it's easier when you're on the website. You'll be able to click on the image and make it larger. Discussing the barbarian, saying, take pride in how their civilized ways set them apart from animals, as if denying one's own nature was a mark of superiority, right? They're talking about what people who aren't barbarians feel like.
What is a barbarian? That's the thing that most people ask about. So, in a way, barbarians, they believe, like, because according to history, they referred to the barbers as savages for murdering and killing. They referred to Germanic tribes such as the Vandals, the Visigoths, the Goths, and other tribes in Europe. And that was the Romans that referred to everyone as barbarians. That was a word that was commonly used, especially influenced in British literature, to describe historically what were these cultures that they encountered. They referred to them as barbarians, calling them uncivilized because they lived out in the forest. They considered, because they believed in their society as being the superior society, but that's what the Roman society believed. They believed that they were the superior society. But little did they know, there was Greece that actually had a society that actually, even though it had only had like 3 societies that were not the same, even though they fell to them. It is interesting enough that their culture and society still around. A lot of this has to do with the fact that even Roman society described these things. Like, they described a savage society that had this word of merit and honor. And surprisingly, they wrote the book on that one, historically depicting the barbarians and their culture. And it was interesting enough to learn a lot of history. When you hear a lot of the stuff that happens, you start to pick up a whole lot of sense of respect for all these cultures, especially the German tribes, the Spanish tribes. And it was kind of interesting to hear these historical things that happened. So let's continue on.
Barbarian, though, and so they just changed this to take pride in their settled ways, as if denying one's connection to nature were a mark of superiority, right? Same concept, the game's the same, but
here's the thing that I kind of agreed with Diversity and Dragons on this whole issue, is that nature isn't really it doesn't care who you are. It's the survival of the fittest. It does not care if you're there. Like, for example, if a hurricane shows up, it does not care who you are. It's just going to go there because that's nature. And you expect everyone to understand what a barbarian is when they're in nature, and they understand it. Nature does not care who you are. It's going to do what it has to do because that's nature. Like if a hungry wolf comes at you and it's hungry, because it's hungry, it's obvious it's going to kill you, because that's what a wolf does. Even though there's certain cases where wolves, come up to you and be nice to you, that's because they notice that you provide survival to them. Certain ones will eat you alive. And that's the sad truth of the matter of survival. Like, that's why barbarians exist, because they seek to survive in where they live, where they located, or they go into other civilizations to try to survive.
But you're using better language for it. And there are a number of other examples here about that kind of topic. So I'm not going to go over every single example. I think you get the point here. Orcs have had a number of changes in the monster manual, from savage raiders to burly raiders. I don't know, the burly is the same comment.
Burly. God damn. They had to use that word, burly. Oh my god. It's the typical gay man usage of word. And how do I know that? Because I hear that all the time. Like a lot of gay men use that word. Like, burly men. My. And now we got to deal with the fact that they're going to use that word burly orcs. Those burly orcs are coming down the road, guys. Yeah, like... yeah, that word was funny. Like, I can't believe people... Those orcs are coming, guys. They're gonna... Those burly, handsome orcs. Like, they do have a fetish for those orcs. Like, they were trying to defend the orcs every time on Twitter. Like, oh, those orcs are so... Orcs are black people, guys. We need to change the language around them and treat them like... Orcs are not black people, guys. Stop doing that, please. It's not... That's an insult to black people. Please stop that. Do not use that argument. Orcs are black people. We need to change the language in order to stop this. You're killing the orcs. I'm going to go ahead and point out something about this, is that when they try to use burly, it kind of just sounds like they're trying to use that word, burly. It's like, why did you have to use that word, burly? We need to make the orcs... Are you guys really trying to turn the orcs gay? A person, a large and strong, heavy-built man. Strapping, well-built and sturdy. That's what burly means, guys. That's what burly means. And it's like commonly used by gay people. He's such a burly man. It's a common word by gay people. Yes, the burly man. Are you trying to turn the orcs gay? Yes. I can see that in Wizard of the Coast. Like, they have a fetish for orcs because they're black. As they claimed, the orcs are black. We're gonna change the name. We're gonna change them to burly. Yeah, burly. Because they have a fetish for... Ah, damn. They definitely have a fetish for fictional characters. And they're gonna probably write, like, orc fan fiction dedicating to the love of orcs. Like, they're gonna say the green, mean sex machine. Green, mean sex machine. That's what they're gonna do. That's what they're gonna do with this whole thing.
Connotation, but it's better than savage. And they remove the "and pillagers" and stooped postures, low foreheads, piggish faces. They remove that out, partly because what this is trying to do is sort of make them as being stupid, right? And we'll see a number of things that address that later in this document.
Yeah.
And you can look.
And I knew it. They got a fetish for those orcs. We gotta stop calling raiders and pillagers. Like, they removed that. Like, they removed, like, they do pillage. And orcs are raiders and pillagers, but they murder people. Orcs are raiders, but they don't want to mention murderers. They don't want to mention that. Like, they don't want the whole Donald Trump thing happening. Like, yes, I can imagine someone says that in D&D. Orcs are murderers and killers and and savage. Therefore, they need to die. I can imagine that. Like, the language that they're using for this. Orcs are savage raiders and pillagers that stoop to posture and low. It's like, what the hell are you trying to change to describe orcs? Orcs are raiders and pillagers. No, they kill people. It's simple as that. Like, you could have easily done that and still get away with it.
Look at some other examples as well, but I think we've talked a fair bit about the sort of savagery, brutality kind of aspect. And then I mentioned hordes, so they did change this hordes of orcs to be humanoid hordes. I think that's interesting in that they are trying to...
Or are they going to change it to orgy of orcs? Towering the Gaia your face. Yes, we could change it to that. We could change it to orgy of orcs. The rampaging orgs and orgy of orcs to the towering Gaia you face. Rampaging orgs to the towering giants you face. Yes, we could do that. We could do that. Like the orgy of orcs. Like if they want to turn the orcs gay and everything, we could, those from the rampaging orgs and the whole like the burly orcs coming to the tower towering at your face, from rampaging orcs to towering giants. So they basically are changing the language to describe things, and it is kind of interesting enough that I can't believe that they did this.
To not connote this sort of rampaging anti-civilization thing as being just like a blanket of all pieces, right? So interesting. And I think actually this failed to catch this thing maybe, but it changed from ogres. Looks like it changed the ogres away to just monsters.
To monsters.
Another topic. So let's go to our second topic, which is madness, insanity, and crazy. All of these terms have a larger connotation these days around mental health.
You know, I suffer from mental health issues, and this is like the reason why I hate to address when people try to bring up mental health issues. I hate people who bring it up because of the fact that when people bring up mental health issues, it reminds me of how much I had to suffer under mental health psychiatrists and how much I had to deal with when I was growing up. And dealing with the fact that my school had to deal with me every fucking day. And every time when someone brings up mental health, they're a bunch of bullshitters. They don't give a shit about mental health at all. Or the mental health. So I'm not going to try to care about mental health. Fuck mental health. I'll tell you that. I hate mental health with a passion. When people bring up this shit, it just reminds me of my past, dealing with mental health and dealing with the issues and taking medication for and suffering under mental health. It brought nothing but pain to me when I dealt with mental health issues. So let's begin with the fact that this guy is going to talk about madness, insanity, and crazy
issues. And so we want to step away from these sort of terms to describe situations where foes are evil. And so we're just painting madness as evil.
Yes, we're painting madness as evil when you have to understand, back in those days, there were people that were called mad because of the fact that they did crazy stuff in history. There were many historical figures in history that were called mad, and even though they were mad, it doesn't automatically mean that they were heroes or anything like that,
or corruption or something like that. We want to step away from using crazy to describe something that's incomprehensible as a situation, or madness as a loss of control of one's mind because of magic or something like that. So we can see an example in the DMG. Again, sometimes the easiest thing is to just remove it. So you're talking about mad necromancers.
Okay, so basically when they bring this up about madness or insanity or crazy, it doesn't automatically mean it just basically loss of control in D&D, even though there's like madness spells that affect your mind. Like any spell that infects you turns you into something or randomly does something to you. It just means that you lost your mind. But of course, it's like they're trying to do this whole aspect of it going like, but pandemonium is a plane of madness, a great mass. Like they basically took that out, a plane of overwhelming chaos, which they kind of had to change that because it was offensive. But let's go ahead and continue and listen to what it has to say.
Just becomes necromancers, and we were already afterwards discussing what they were, corrupt purveyors of human flesh. We don't need to throw in that extra piece that has this mental health connotation, right? And then we sometimes change things by swapping the words. So we can see here, pandemonium is a plane of madness. We just say of overwhelming chaos, right? And further describing pandemonium, it says, driven mad by the incessant winds. And we just talked about the incessant winds have driven many to delirium, right? So just describe its confusion.
Delirium. Let's look up what delirium means, because this is... a serious change in mental abilities, delirium, dementia. Are they saying that delirium is often traced into one or more factors, including a severe long illness and imbalance in the body, such as low sodium and disorder? Like, no. That's stupid. That's retarded. I'm sorry. That's not gonna help describe. Because if I'm being given a Magnus spell, I'm not drunk. You want me to get drunk on oh yes, is so we're gonna call it delirium. Or use of drugs or withdrawal, infection, surgery, a certain medicine may cause a certain the symptoms of delirium sometimes confused with symptoms of dementia. Healthcare providers may rely on input of the family member and caregivers with diagnosis disorder. So, I don't think dementia would be the best term to describe madness, but okay. To describe what you're trying to say here on this whole situation, because either he was given like mushrooms, or like does anyone in D&D use mushrooms to play the game? I don't know. He lives in Portland, so he might have had a great access of mushrooms, and yeah, playing this game and doesn't realize it. Like, I'm pretty sure living in the state of Portland, Oregon, I'm pretty sure the guy has a real good access of mushrooms and probably is forgetful about a lot of things, or it possibly happens in the frame of mind. So I don't know. Whatever he's taking.
Or it's a lack of being able to perceive your environment correctly, right? Describe whatever it is that it is instead of using the term. Insane wizard becomes villainous wizard. Mm-hmm. Crazy becomes foolhardy. Mm-hmm. Go insane with fear. You're overcome by fear, right? So those kinds of examples. The D&G has a number of references as well that we can look at. A mad person is simply just removed. or I think they swap it for a prophet, because that's really what they're trying to talk about, right? A herald, a town crier, a mad person. What's a prophet, right? And you could find other ways to describe it, but we get the point here. A soothsayer instead of a mad woman standing on a street corner.
A hooker.
And here's a good one. In a typical campaign, characters aren't driven mad by the horrors they face and the carnage they inflict is changed to, in many campaigns, little focus is placed on the mental and emotional impact of the dangers characters face, right?
I swear, when they make that word, okay, many campaigners and little focus and placed on the mental and emotional impact of the dangers the characters face. God. Why? Why do they always gotta change the language? Why? Oh, God. Many campaigns, little focus and placed on the mental and emotional impact of the dangers of the characters face. Oh, come on, guys. This is bullshit. This is kind of bullshitty. I'm sorry. This is kind of what you would expect from somebody that would say this. Because it sounds like someone that's like a psychologist thinks this is going to the mental and emotional impact of the dangers the characters face. Duh. Of course, they're going to face those emotional, psychological attacks on them. And that's what's going to happen. But yet, the reason why they do this is because they wanted to make it sound like how a British person talks. That's the whole point of it. Like, they're trying to go into that whole British typical wording of it. That's the reason why they wrote it that way.
Very similar. The overall concept is similar, but we are changing this and cleaning it up so it doesn't have those problems to it that are going to impact many people, especially people who are dealing with somebody in their family or their own selves with mental health issues, right? And there are a number of others here on this topic of cosmic horror instead of risk of insanity. Insane becomes bizarre. Writings of raving lunatics, incomprehensible scrawlings. Tormented instead of raving. Deranged is removed. The mind drifts to a place beyond normal madness. Just the mind imagines this reality. Yeah, and so you can take a look at these others.
Yeah, they're treating this like some mental health PSA. Don't say crazy. Don't say... Don't call them crazy. Don't call them... Or else they'll stab you with a knife. Alright, and the next one is bioessentialism, so we'll find out about that one.
Here's one good one in the Player's Handbook. A lunatic driven mad is a cultist tormented by. Great. It still carries the same concept. There are a number of things about bioessentialism, so this is where we are describing...
No, it doesn't. A cult member believes in their ideas. The only difference is a person driven crazy or driven mad, like you said, like, is a person that believes that they're driven by a madness or craziness or something, but it's not the same thing. A cult believes in one person or believes in something or follows something. I don't get why they want to change that. That's kind of retarded.
Describing characteristics related to culture or individual experiences, and we're assigning them to all members of the species and sort of saying, yeah, this is just like the way biology works. All these creatures come out this way. It's the way we might say, the bird is green to settle, to fade into the forest or something like that. And so we have language here about how ogres, when they mate with other species, what happens. And so you can take a look at how this has tried to still convey where an ogrelon comes from, but without the sort of bioessentialist piece to it. And sometimes things are just taken out. Like the idea, one of the things that can be a problem is this idea of people breeding other people has historical problems as well. So breeding Quaggoths is just recruiting and training Quaggoths, right? We don't need this in the fantasy. It is not critical to the fantasy of the story.
Yeah, so for those who don't know what a Quaggoth is, this is what they are. They're little cat. They're like little like cat-looking creatures that are like, you can see right here. But they're underground. In 5e, they exist. And this is their stats and everything. They're not really intelligent creatures, but you could tell their AC, their health. You could actually raise their health a little bit more. They can be very difficult. They're very chaotic neutral. Even though they look evil, they're animals. So that's what they look like. As you can see. So let's continue.
Let's just change what's happening here, right? Racial purity and comparisons of lesser. So there's been a number of problems with the language here. There have been many improvements over the years in RPGs. But here, beholders have this concept around racial purity of their kind. And so that is changed to say that they just simply consider some things as flaws, and they vary greatly in physical forms, right? And then they conflict over that, right? So they kind of all have their ideas, and that creates conflict. That's different than saying racial purity, right? That's
yeah. I don't even know why they have to sexualize the idea of beholders, because I don't even know why they would kind of get into that whole change of that. Okay. It's like beholders. Like, should we care? They were magically born. That's how they were created. I don't know how the beholders become like this. It's like, why would anyone care about that? Who would write that? Racial purity of its kind. Like, okay. Greatly in their physical forms and making okay. So that's what they changed.
let's get that out of there. Drow fear and shun the Dryaders, holding them in lower esteem than slaves. They just fear and despise Dryaders, right? There was already text that explained the why of it. We'll talk about this later as well, but Dark Elves get swapped for Drow, so that is interesting. And we'll talk more about that concept of Dark. All right, next topic is low intelligence as a characteristic of a species. It ties into that bioessentialist attitude or concept, the bioessentialist theme. Here we swap out anything that really says that the creatures are stupid, dim-witted, things like that. So they're changed to be incurious. Here, dim-witted is taken out. This thing about there's a text here is as savages eating and breeding in the hills like animals, they have never needed to adapt and change, so their minds and emotions remain simple and undeveloped. Right. So this simply changes it to saying that they, through their environment, are not needing to adapt and change. Right. Much shorter, and take out all those problems in the text that make you read it and go, what are you telling me here? Kuoto were simple creatures, never meant to endure the oppressive mental whatever. They're just unable to endure the oppressive mental force that the Illithids put upon them, right? You don't have to characterize them, just state the sort of historical thing that happened. And we can see some additional text here. It's easier if you click on it on the website, but savage, degenerate changed to violent and ever hungry, simple-minded to single-minded. Yeah. And then some issues around gender. And so this is something that has been evolving a lot, right? If you look at the earliest examples of D&D or other RPGs, the GM is always referred to as male. Not always, but often in most texts. And we've advanced to saying things, hey, let's just say they instead of using male or female or swapping. I think third edition, swap between the genders. But now we realize that, they is better because, well, male and female can be limiting as well. Not everybody sees themselves that way. And your role can change. And so by addressing gender differently, we can be more inclusive to everybody who's reading our work. And there's text here that talks to the DM saying, or to the player, you can play a male or female character without gaining any special benefits or hindrances. And so they changed that to say, you choose your character's sex, gender, and sexual orientation, right? You make the choice of who you are. Think about how your character does or does not conform to the broader culture.
Okay. Let's see, sex, gender, and sexual orientation. And what does orientation mean? Let's look at what sexual orientation means. God, I get it. They want to insert sexuality into the game, and yeah. This is what I don't know if they want to insert sexuality, like sexual orientation of a person's sexuality into a game. A lot of people avoid this in the game because I can understand the whole situation with RPG horror stories, because there's one particular story that kind of went off the hinges, and I thought it was really stupid because, I thought you like playing a gay character. You're playing a gay character. Trick. The joke's on you, DM, but I'm not gay. And I was just pretending to be gay in this role-playing game. God damn it. People, stop. Because I heard that in RPG horror stories. Like, I'll show you guys. This is what happened in RPG horror stories. Like, I read that story and I was just like, unbelievable. Like, because there's some stories that can be true, but there's some stories that are just like, yeah, it's pretty bad on Reddit. Like, you can read the RPG horror stories on this one. Like, I read this story. Like, no joke. I read this story. Like, this is why I hate sexuality in gaming, because they try to put this on the storyline of RPG horror stories. A lot of people like this story because it kind of displays how bad it is. Like, here's what happened. I used to play D&D at a local shop before I went off to college. A group I was playing with were people I knew from the shop. wouldn't occasionally play Magic with, would play Magic with, but they introduced me to D&D, and we ended up setting up a game. The DM was part of this friendish group, although I knew him. The least he didn't play Magic often, but he did play D&D. When we were making characters, we were allowed to basically invent our own, gods to worship as long as they weren't so OP or broke the rules in the game. So I created a goofy, flirty, neutral good gay cleric, and he had remained one of my favorite characters to this day. But when I showed my DM my character sheet, he looked it over and rolled his eyes and dryly said, "A gay cleric, eh? Like, you don't think a cleric might find the kind of thing sinful?" It's like, oh God. So I laughed and explained to him that his religion is cool with homosexuality. He seemed annoyed, but I guess he couldn't really say no after explicitly allowing us to create our own God's faiths. He would, however, throughout the campaign constantly have me get attacked by holy cultists, basically sue different monsters and DM NPCs who fought to purify the land. They would attack my character for being gay. Damn. I got to the point that metagaming as some sort of the cultists had no way of knowing my character was gay before attacking. The excuse was their god don't approve of homosexuality, so they sent their followers to attack you. Then, of course, the random acts of God, the acts of the gods that nearly killed me, like random smite lightning damage called for it. The holy fire. It was insane. I almost died so many times. It would have if the party wasn't so well balanced and I was stacked into a brim with potions. The DM seems obsessed. Like, I don't mind the homophobic NPCs as bigotry can add a layer to the world building to impact the story, but this was just lame and stupid. Nevertheless, the rest of the group was cool with my character, and none of us had actually died yet, so I stayed. But the fact that I hadn't died ended up pissing the DM off, as he would make the rude comments saying the party is full of min-maxers and how we were abusing the potion system by using our hard-earned gold to buy extra potions to survive the DM's homophobic murder hobo cultist. Well, the straw that broke the camel's back was that our party got ambushed by a horde of orcs. Yes, they still use that language. Horde of orcs. Horde. Yes, the same language that they use to describe in the thing, and he calls this guy homophobic in the storyline. So let's continue on. Like, this is unfortunately, we weren't dead though. Man, I wish I had died. I woke up. This is what he said. Okay, well, let's get. I'll just put it this way. Well, the straw that broke the camel's back was when our party got ambushed by a horde of orcs that surrounded us. This was unwinnable scenario, very obvious. So the orcs targeted me on my turn, obviously drowned me immediately. They downed our party member's wizard too afterwards. The paladin healed me, and we tried to run on our turn, but they took the opportunity attacks, basically TPK'd the party. Unfortunately, we weren't dead, though. Man, I wish I had just died. We woke up in the orc keep in the Underdark, where we were in chains. At this point, we were kind of jaded IRL, as we all felt railroaded by some unwinnable encounter, but at least glad that we had survived. Okay, we survived. We weren't expecting what would come next. A few orcs approached our party. The orcs chieftain said, "That's the one." As the orcs grabbed me and strapped me down, the chieftain, according to the DM, focused his big green cock up your ass. The DM laughed. I shook my head. The DM said, "What? You're gay. Don't y'all like it up the ass?" I told him how stupid that idea is. The gay people want to be able to choose their sexual partners, but not have forced sex on them. Also, I mentioned that I'm not gay in real life, since the DM assumed I must be because my character. The DM then flippantly ignored everything I just said, and then began, I shit you not, calculating bludgeoning damage from the orc's penis to 2d6. It was 2d6 damage to the penis. I wasn't enough to kill me, so the other orcs raped my cleric until the bludgeoning damage was enough to kill me. 2d6 to penis. This has to be the fakest story ever. This is like the fakest story ever about... I shit you not, calculated the bludgeoning damage from the orcs. Beep beep. That's what happened. Oh wow. Skype. I gotta turn that off. Like, I can't believe that shit. Like, that's terrible. That he would use that system. It was 2d6. It wasn't enough for me. So I had other corpse rape my cleric until the bludgeoning damage was enough to kill me. I was pretty checked it out at this point. The campaign ended shortly after, and I went home. I made up some excuse as to why I couldn't play anymore, to avoid the game store, so I wouldn't have to answer as to why I wasn't playing anymore. But after 2 years, I came back and met up with some of my old friends from the game store and got back to playing Magic and soon Yu-Gi-Oh! And then D&D again. But sure as hell wasn't playing anything with that DM again. TDRL, the homophobic DM targets, rapes, and kills my cleric off with the horde. Yeah, I read this. I read this story. Like, this is like the worst. Like, I don't think anyone... I think that part about bludgeoning damage from the orc's pee-pee, 2d6, would do that damage. You would have to have a really huge green... You know, that's what he referred to it. Like, the green... Yeah. Like, he kind of referred to that. It was like, oh my god. 2d6 orc pee-pee. Was 2d6. The orc pee-pee was 2d6 bludgeoning damage, guys. 2d6. That's how bad it was. So let's continue on.
Think about how your character interacts with the broader culture's expectations. So just some cleanup of that language as we see it evolve.
This is why I don't like... This is why they want to put sexuality into a game. They want to put sexuality into the game and try to turn it into, like... That leaves people in danger. Like, no matter who you are. And I'm going to point out to you guys, when I read that whole Reddit story, it's hard for me to believe that someone would go and create that. An orc pee-pee that does 2d6 2d6 points of damage to your dice 2d6 to kill your orc, to kill your cleric. This is why it's hard for me to believe that story. It could be true, but I just can't believe it because it's hard for me to believe something like that actually did happen. And yeah, it's creepy that it would happen, but at the same time kind of sick and stupid because it's hard for me to believe that someone would go out of their way to kill somebody in the game and do 2d6 points of damage using their penis to do that. I'm not joking. That's what he wrote on that storyline of RPG Horror Stories. So anyways, that's what happened.
There. There's a case here, example of a male drow cleric and defining traditional gender divisions of drow society. We see here Coralon, I think it's followers of Coralon, see themselves as embodying their deity's transcendence of sex and gender, and some elves' connection to the deity allows them to change their sex. So just slight.
Oh God! This is the reason why they don't want to put this stuff in there. This is going to be exploitive someday. If someone does this, I'm gonna assume this is what's gonna happen. If they do use this type of language, it's going to be very exploitive. It's going to be taken advantage of, and I have a feeling that they're gonna do this because if I play, for example, a transgender character in a D&D game, and if I do that just to piss off the DM and everyone, because I read the RPG horror story on that one, and I don't want to do that to the DM, but if I do that and make that into a big deal in the game, but I understand there's like the whole main character issue. If I do that, I want to show people how much a trans person could get away with it in the game. And then, of course, at the same time, do that in real life. How many trans people could get away with stuff in real life versus in the game. If I do that in the game as a trans character, imagine me doing this stuff, killing people, and also trying to negotiate with people and get away and pull off all the bullshit that this happens in real life. It would be so fucking bad. And I don't want to do that to people, but if it has to be done just to demonstrate the issue, you don't want to put sexuality into a game. Trust me, it's going to be difficult and confusing for everyone else to deal with me trying to play a character that is LGBTQ, and you guys would have a hard time making me and try to entrap me in situations and such that would be ridiculous. I'm not trying to be mean here, but if it happens, this is the reason why they don't want to put sexuality in the game, because it's not to be like heteronormative or anything like that, as they call it, or cishat, whatever it's called. It's that it would be very difficult. I understand they want their romance story or something like that, but it just kind of gets into that point of, because I was thinking about making a character that is trans, just to piss off everybody, just to demonstrate how ridiculous it would be to get away with certain bullshit situations with people, because I'm going to show how they demonstrate their stuff versus to me, and try to gaslight me versus them, because it's a mere reflection of them and how everyone sees them, to point out the issue. And that main character that I'm going to create is going to be demonstrating that. D&D, because it's not to stereotype people, it's just to point out the issue with what people perceive you as, the villain. That's the thing I'm trying to demonstrate to people.
Cleanup, right? This is the kind of thing that you want to look at and parse and take an example at. And there are a number of things here that really are kind of, these issues can be very hard to parse. And so we want a representation that reflects society. The language evolves.
Yeah, because I know what this language is trying to do. It's trying to change the language in order to, in order to introduce the idea of, because I know what this is all about. You want to change language because I know you're a part of that group of people from Portland, Oregon, Canada, and also UC Berkeley, who want to change the language because you read the same book that I read in order to have people accept the LGBTQ. That's the whole thing you're trying to do. You're trying to make people accept you as a person. I understand, like, everyone's I understand what this is all about. I understand this is basically trying to change the language in order to make people accept the LGBTQ more, because you're trying to, and also change the language of how they perceive people that are like that have mental health issues, that are that are disabled, obese, all these things that he kind of comes in with about these issues. He's trying to address them in a way that people can be accepted and be, as they call it, inclusive. But the problem is, I know there are women out there that are not very accepting of others. I can tell you that. Like, if I sit down on the table with people, they probably don't know me because I'm a total stranger, or they don't, like, I understand, like, there's the problem with people that have like bad hygiene problems, like they smell bad, and I know that people don't accept those type of people. They would tell them, like, dude, take a shower. Like, seriously, you smell bad. You just take a shower. There's also those people, like, I can relate to that. Like, this is kind of the problem. Like, I know people who can't accept people. Like, they don't accept me. I don't accept them. This is the type of problems, like, they're trying to change. They're trying to change fat. They're trying to change slavery. They're trying to, like, the phylactery thing. I believe the Pathfinder removed the reference phylactery, which is a Jewish cultural origin. But it's basically, phylactery was basically used by wizards. But I believe Dragonlance has that word phylactery. Slavery is that was the other thing that they brought up about that. Trying to change them to servants, which is a stupid thing. Like, you just admit that they were just slaves. And the word dark, that was the other one that he brought up. The word dark was the thing about slaves. Like, he wanted to change the word slaves, and then the underdark, the dark. Like, that one was the dark elves and everything. Like, he basically, they wanted to change the words about the dark thing. But he brings that up in this conversation. Yeah, because I did watch this. But it's like, didn't you play a game called Dark Sun? Like, didn't you play the game Dark Sun and it actually had slavery in it? Like, and you said you played it during the 80s? Like, Dark Sun was around for a long time. I know that. Like, Dark Sun was like this popular RPG, and you played Greyhawk as well. I did play Greyhawk. It was actually pretty fun. Now, I want to go ahead and get into this because I understand this is something that he wants to address, and this, like, the language that he wants to change in the game, especially, I know a lot of people want to change the language, what can be said in the game, especially in D&D books that they're trying to change. They're trying to change it because I know what this is about. I know what they're trying to do, and I already said it. They're trying to change this language to help the LGBTQ. They want to help, people that are gay, straight, they're trying to change this language to make it, people accept them. But in reality, no one can accept them. Because you're dealing with, it's not because people are bigots, it's because there are a lot of reasons. Like, I seen how people treat people. And they don't seem to get that not everyone's going to be treated equally under the guise of equality. Because I seen how people are treated under the guise of equality. Not everyone is going to be treated equally. I know that from the reality of it. You could be treated well, but at the same time you won't be treated as well as you think, because I know for a fact I've seen that type of thing before. And the fact that these people want to change that, that's fine, but once that's over, they're not going to treat everyone the same as you would expect. I know from experience. I've seen it happen, and I know that I can't trust it. So anyways, you could dislike me for saying that stuff. You could disagree with me, but I know from the guise of equality, my experience seeing how the game industry and everything else treats people, they don't really care to, they don't really care. So anyways, I'm going to get out of here. You guys have a good day. Because I'm out. Peace. Because I just want to go to bed.